introduce you to Ed Chamberlin, to Richard Hoiles, to Brough Scott as our panel this evening, and thank all our guest panelists later on over the course of the evening. We really are honoured, and I feel very, very grateful that they've taken up their time on a Wednesday evening before we go back into lockdown again for hopefully just 4 weeks. So thank you to Ed and to Brough and to Richard Hoiles and Chamberlin Sports as well, Ed's media training company that's sort of been started up over the course of the summer. We're really, really grateful. And I will then pass over to you all and look forward to the rest of the evening.
Thank you, Harriet. We will endeavour to lift everyone's spirits as best we can, as we've been trying to do with ITV over the last few weeks and months, try and give you an insight into that this evening. And we want you involved as well. More on that in a minute. Hopefully you can see my Chamberlin Sports and ITV colleague, Richard Wells, alongside me for the start of this evening. We'll hear from Brough in just a second, Nikki Henderson, Harry Whittington, possibly a couple of jockeys as well. Like it is on a weekend afternoon. Hopefully we can just give you 45 minutes, an hour, bit of an escape, grab a glass of wine and hopefully enjoy. And Richard, Harriet's spot on, isn't she, when she says racing at the moment's tinged with such sadness, with the racecourses we're going to completely empty, thankfully racing going ahead. But what have you made as a commentator and travelling around the country of racing over the last 6 months?
I think it's more the day-to-day meetings, Ed, to be honest. I mean, I think when we've got the bustle of an ITV meeting, high-quality racing out there, you do get wrapped up in the race itself. But for certain courses, Plumpton, for example, where the commentary box is sort of in the crowd, you forget how many people you just share a few words with. And I think that's the memory of Warwick, which was one of those trials, of course, where we were allowed to have a limited number of people. It was the impact that the social side of it made. So many people just exchanging a few words, obviously faces they may not even spoken to, even though they've stood probably next to them for the last 15 or 20 years. And it reminded me, it's a shared enjoyment, and particularly for members, because very aware that if you make that commitment to a race course, you're intending to go to most of their fixtures. And so you're the group, if you like, that feel it the hardest of those that attend regularly. And yeah, it's a pretty sobering and chastening experience, but I am more positive that I think, you know, once we emerge the other side of Christmas, that we can begin to see a path back.
I think you're absolutely right there about the importance of annual members for all these racecourses, and their support, as Harriet touched on, is so important. And Newbury's a racecourse, Richard, I think it's fair to say is close to both our hearts. We're pretty local to Newbury. It's where my working life started back in 1989 when I was the assistant plumber and in charge of the fire alarm when Gofar won the Hennessy in that year. And we appreciate what Harriet and the Newbury team do for us, don't we? Because they've gone over and above what they needed to do. I think it sounds like the same for annual members, but also for us on TV with the music and the way we're looked after at Newbury.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's quite difficult for people on course to recreate any sort of atmosphere. And initially, I think everyone was a little bit almost embarrassed to do so. But the point I know you would make is that for people sitting at home, which may not include those of you that are watching this evening, you prefer to be out at the racecourse, if there is nothing happening on track, you can't convey that atmosphere back into the living rooms. For people who regularly watch on a Saturday, for whom the experience is no different. And I think it's taken a while for us to work out how to pitch that right, to explain why we can't always provide the pictures and the walking alongside horses in the paddock that we would ideally like to, but hopefully can still convey enough of the atmosphere and excitement that makes us all love the sport.
And we will continue to try to do so. And this evening, we would love you to be involved. Ask us anything you want about the season ahead, Newbury, Memory Lane, how ITV works. You can ask us anything you like, as long as it stays Chatham House rules. The Q&A button will be somewhere on your screen. If you press it, it's on the top of my screen, might be on the bottom of yours, I don't know. But if you press it, you can ask us a question, and I'll try and have a look during the 45 minutes or so, but definitely get to the end and get through as many of your questions as we can. So get involved, ask us questions, and we will endeavour to give you the best answers we can if you want any insight. Hoiles is much better than me about the actual racing. I hopefully might be able to help if you want to know anything about the television world. But this man certainly knows plenty about racing. I thought he'd seen everything in racing, and then along comes a pandemic. He's in our Chamberlin Sports stable. He is the legend, and there he is, the maestro, that is Brough Scott, who might need to unmute himself. Brough, we have this on our IT. There you go. You're ready to go. You're unmuted. You're ready to roll. How are you, Brough? And how important, this is the question I want to ask you, how important right now with everything that's going on is sport, and in particular racing, for the health of our nation?
Well, I think to try and, you might as well be half full rather than half empty, because we know how the emptiness comes. But we've actually had a wonderful flat racing season. We missed a couple of months, but then suddenly it was all go. It's been a very exciting flat racing season. And actually the jumping season is becoming very exciting. Paul Nicholls had 4 winners yesterday at Exeter, and one of them was a great big thing that was 10-1, might be anything. The might be anythings are coming into the game. We've already had the Charlie Hall. So the seasons are doing what the seasons should do. The only trouble is we can't go watch them, but we can try and show it, can't we?
Absolutely. Tell us about Newbury, Brough. Your first memory of Newbury. Did you ride at Newbury?
My first memory of Newbury was riding there when I was meant to be having a tutorial at Oxford, where I was a student, and I couldn't finish the tutorial in time because it was about the Black Death, and I hadn't done my essay properly, but I had to fudge on for ages. And the man got quite interested, and eventually I had to rush off at 1 o'clock. I just got there for the 2:30, got beat, and I remember the owner complaining. I couldn't explain. I was a bit hurried from why I got there. But anyway, and the first time I rode for Fred Winter there was when I was still an amateur, and I fell off in the parade. And I don't remember being hired by Fred Winter very many times afterwards. You'd be surprised to hear.
What about happier memories on the track? The best horses you've seen, perhaps?
Well, I did have a double there once. Amazing. I won the Mandarin Chase. I won 2 races, wait for this, in photo finishes. Never happened again, you'd be surprised to hear. But no, I've had the greatest of memories there, really, of, well, let's be clear about it, the greatest of horses to perhaps ever run at Newbury. I was actually riding later in the day for the Hennessy, the 1966 Hennessy, which is Arkle in front. Arkle, peerless Arkle, hadn't been beaten for 3 years, had won 3 Gold Cups. The TV Times, wait for this, had voted him the Personality of the Year ahead of the Beatles and Bobby Moore, the Captain of England.
Amazing. Wonderful pictures.
And this is little Johnny Hayne, who was 20 years ahead of his time. You see his forward seat on Kelsborough in second. Strawbridge Cornish is the grey, who's going to be second and third in the Gold Cup. Arkle, by the way, is giving these 2.5 stone. 2.5 stone. And again, we couldn't believe, I'm standing at the last fence, you couldn't believe Arkle would ever be beaten. But Stan Miller was this extraordinarily innovative rider, and he was hiding behind Arkle all the time. So Pat Taff couldn't actually see him. And he pulls Strawbridge Cornish out to the right, going to the last fence. I'm seeing it quite slow motion. And he lands running. I don't know if you're seeing this. He lands running, and the momentum swept him past Arkle. He goes a length up, nearly a length up. Arkle keeps battling. 35 pounds he's giving. And this is Strawbridge Cornish, who, by the way, won 11 races the season before and went on to be second and third in the Gold Cup. That's how good Arkle was. And I was standing by that last fence. And the memory, as you can hear, has never faded. And I thought then, wow, I've never seen anything like that. It was a terrifically exciting that he got beat, but what an amazing horse he was. And I have incredible luck for goodness knows how many years later. 66 to 2012, so how many years is that? Nearly 50. I was standing, not the same place, but about 100 yards from the winning line against the rails for when Frankel came back, Ed. Frankel came back for Lockinge. And as you all know, any of you members listening, you never have a top 3-year-old. When it comes to run as a 4-year-old, will it be the same? They often aren't. And I went and stood there, and okay, he was running against the same horses as usual, Bullet Train there in front, his usual leader. Straight behind him is Celebration, who has been switched to O'Brien's, ridden by Joseph, funnily enough. And would he be, he'd always been beaten by, but would he do something different? You're never sure. Frankel pulling as usual. Was that funny enough? They had a pacemaker, Windsor Palace. It didn't seem to do anything with him. And Richard Hughes is at the back trying to pick up place money, which he did on a horse of Hannon's. But I waited, you watched him coming towards you, and again, he was always in the same sort of position, but would he actually go and do something? I'm getting this slow motion, but as he went up to pick up, you see they're already beginning to push behind. They're pushing on Windsor Palace. Joseph is closing on Acceleration. And there's a moment when they begin to go. Ian Mongan here we are now, here we're coming quickly. He's sitting behind Bullet Train. And if you remember it's his head carriage, I always remember about Frankel. His head carriage and his stride. When he went to push, the horse flattened down. The French call it ventre à terre. And there's a moment here where Acceleration tries to go after him and absolutely can't. And standing, watching Frankel then, powering away. I'm standing against the rail, you might see me in a second, and thinking, wow. And there's a wonderful line they used for Secretariat, I remember some American rail watcher, was that horse, he could blow a hole in the wind. And that day, I remember thinking, Frankel blows a hole in the wind. And goodness, he's a memory. To think I've got that memory, and Frankel and Arkle. I'm the luckiest man around.
Wonderful. Richard, were you there, either of those?
I was about 7 months old in November. No, 9 months old actually in November 1966. But as you know, we try to ITV. We try to use things to frame races, and so I'm always scouring the internet for something that might be useful. And lo and behold, I can hold that up. But I think we've probably got a better picture of it. That is a race card from that day that we've just seen. Arkle's victory in the 2nd November 1966. And actually, when I got the race card itself, not only did it have pictures in it of previous Hennessy Gold Cup winners, but it also had, you may be able to see there, scrawlings over it of a gentleman who had obviously gone there to witness his beloved Arkle. And if you'll forgive me, I'll turn it round and read what it actually says at the bottom. It says, against Stallbridge Colonist, there's an exclamation mark, and it says, he beat the great and beautiful Arkle by only half a length. # oh dear. And then underneath, deathly silence as we watched Arkle beaten. And then up against it, almost to give an excuse, it says, note, Arkle, 1st run of the season, Stallbridge Colonist, 4th run of the season. So if you like, it just shows, Brough, the sort of the way the public almost couldn't believe that Arkle could be beaten, but even in defeat, their respect for him and admiration for him was sort of undimmed, really, because, as you'll remember, there was a separate handicap for Arkle to every other horse in training, which was why he was allowed to give so much, had to give so much weight to Stallbridge Colonist.
But the Times of London, Times had a leader column on the Monday saying, a great horse got beat, but you're going to get beat. This was a great way to do it. He personifies all sorts of things. Well, again, the day may come when we have another horse that can do something like that. But again, the horse inspired the nation, and he did it at Newbury. And that's what we all have to try and hope for now.
Wonderful to go down memory lane, Brough. Thank you so much. You go and pour yourself a big glass of red wine. There might be a question for you later. I don't know whether can you stay on the line? We're about to meet our first trainer of the evening.
I'll get my first glass.
Brough, thank you very much indeed.
So what we're going to do now is speak to the first of the trainers we're going to hopefully speak to during the course of the evening, and that is a man who's made steady progress throughout his training career, never too far away from Newbury, but also had those breakthrough success last year at the festival with Simply the Best. Already has unveiled a really handy horse in Rouge Vif. So hopefully the wonders of modern technology. Harry Whittington joins us. A very good evening to you, Harry. Thanks very much, first of all, for your time. It is really appreciated. And we'll have a chat about a couple of the horses, but fantastic looking back. Last 12 months, I know it's been difficult for many people, but you must look back with a great deal of satisfaction.
Yeah, no, it's great. Can you hear me okay for starting?
Absolutely.
Yeah, good. No, it's been fantastic, really, amazing year. And, the Cheltenham Festival was obviously amazing for us. And, it gave us a spring in our step to go into one of the toughest times that, everyone's been through for a very long time. So it was, it's given us a bit of a jump start for the new season as well. A few more new horses and a few more new owners. So very exciting.
And Harry, it doesn't seem that long ago when I remember the celebration when you had your first Cheltenham winner, and it was great to watch. I love the thing about jump racing for ITV, to see joy on you and your family that day, and you haven't stopped since, it seems. And I always take half term off, and I regretted it a week or so ago because I missed out on the first Cheltenham meeting when Rouge Vif produced the performance of the season, arguably, certainly so far. Were you surprised by that? And what have you got planned now?
Yeah, well, I suppose he just blew us away a bit. How, in the manner in which he was able to do it was fantastic, and it was a surprise to us. I mean, you always hope that they might improve and they might go and win, giving lumps of weight away. But to sort of do it in the manner he did it was very special. He's always been a horse that we've held in very high regard, and he's obviously a dual Grade 2 winner. Probably not quite been there in Grade 1s. Third in the Arkle, third in the Aintree. 2 more novice Grade 1. So, he's a very consistent horse. He's always showed us an enormous amount of ability at home. He's always been an extremely good workhorse. I suppose since I've been training, he's probably one of the better workhorses I've ever had. Just raw talent, raw speed, not a lot of horses can go with him, if any, really. So he's always been a horse we've thought a huge amount of. But to go and do that, in his sort of second season chasing, in a handicap off 156, to do that and go up to 164 is extremely exciting. But I think ground is important to him. He's lethal on that ground. He'll always run his races on soft and heavy because he's got that class. But I think he's probably going to need to have that sort of ground to be that good.
As regards to the horse that gave you that Cheltenham winner, Simply the Bets, you mentioned ratings. I suppose you're almost going to be forced into Grady Company now with Rouge Vif. Is there another handicap in Simply the Bets before he may take a similar path?
I very much hope so. It's like anything. He's 157, so he's a pound above what Rouge was. Coming out of his novice season, so he is going to have to, improve like Rouge did to, earn his right to go into Grade 1 company. So he's in the Paddy Power next Saturday. It's the obvious race for him, isn't it? 2.5. He's a dual course and distance winner. That form line is rock solid, isn't it? With Imperial Aura, even that January race that he won now is working out even better with Anthony Honeyball's horse winning at Ascot on Saturday. So it's rock solid, that form, and he's in great form at home. He seems like he's improved for a summer, and I couldn't be happier with him. He's sparkling in his work, his bloods. And we've got 10 days to go. I'm really looking forward to it. I think I don't suppose he's been forgotten, but with Imperial Aura obviously winning on Sunday and shortening in the price, and I think Saint Sonnet is favourite, isn't he? So he's if you take his form from last season, and if he can improve, I think he's a good each way price.
And you mentioned the great attraction, of course, of having Saturday horses is the development of wider owners. So we chatted about a couple of the big names. Can you give us an indication of maybe some of the other nicer younger horses that we don't know so much about who've been attracted to the yard this year?
Yeah, no, we're very fortunate to have some new owners, and it's fantastic. We've got a lovely young horse that runs on Saturday at Aintree called Doc Pickney. Who's owned by the Jockey Club Southwest Syndicate, which I think Ed is an ambassador.
Absolutely, I'm delighted to hear this.
So I thought I'd slip that one in.
You're not just saying this because I'm on the call here.
Yeah, I thought I'd slip it in there. No, he's a really nice horse. We just wanted to sort of work out from his work at home whether he was going to be, whether he was going to run in a bumper first. But although he works very well, he hasn't got that sort of real turn of foot that you'd need for a bumper. And actually, he's won a 3 mile point to point, and he gallops and he jumps, and he's got a bit of class. So I think we're going to start him off in the 2.5 mile novice hurdle at Aintree on Saturday on soft ground. He wants it soft because he won on soft, and he's sort of, his action would suggest that he's quite a big, heavy framed horse. I think he'd be better on soft ground. So we've only just got Vegas Blue to turn on to take on first time out by the looks of things. But anyway, he's a very nice horse. The form is working out really well. The third horse is point to point won at Carlisle there, I think 10 days ago for John Joe O'Neill. And the fourth horse apparently bolted up in a point to point this weekend. So the form's rock solid. he's a really nice young horse, and it's great to have the Jockey Club Southwest Syndicate on board.
You know you've made it then, Harry, when you crack these high-profile owners. Forget the Brookses, you've got Chamberlin. It's like, can you just remind us, just remind us of the name again of the horse?
Doc Picked Me. Doc
Lovely.
Picked Me, all one word, and he's named after Derek O'Connor because he was going into this yard all winter, and he was riding schooling working all their horses, and he just kept saying, "This is the one, this is the one, this is the one." So they called him, obviously Derek's nickname is Doc, so the trainer called him Doc Pick Me. So that's the story.
So I've got a plan here, Harry, with the call we're on this evening. Let's win at the weekend, and then should we go to the Ladbrokes Trophy weekend at Newbury, perhaps?
Yes, exactly. There you go. See, we've got it all sussed. The only thing is, it's not a Jockey Club racecourse, is it?
We can get back in favour.
I'll get told not to run in there. But they have said they'll listen to the trainer, so I'll have to tell them it's a nice galloping flat track, so that's where he needs to go next. But no, we've got a lovely young Sholikoff horse that won a point-to-point first time out, and he's owned by Simon Munir and Isaac Swade, so that's very exciting. He's called Sir Sholikoff. He has only run once in a point-to-point and won nicely, so he's a proper horse. Really looking forward to running him. He's been a little bit behind. He's a big horse and take plenty of work, so he'll probably be out towards the end of the month. Maybe at Newbury, you never know. We haven't started making entries for him yet, but he's got to do a couple more pieces of work, and obviously we're 3 weeks away from Newbury, so we'll have to see. Other than that, what else have we got? We've got a few nice young. We've got one running tomorrow actually at Market Raisin in a maiden hurdle called Qualis Mart. He has come with a bit of a reputation from France, and he was reported to have been at David Cotton's as a 2-year-old and a 3-year-old. So he knows his job. He's a very good jumper. He runs first time out tomorrow in a maiden hurdle at Market Raisin, and he's owned by Kate and Andrew Brooks. So really looking forward to running him. So we've got a nice team.
Now, I remember having chatted to you before, because forgive me if I get the name wrong, it's a little while ago, but one of my favourite horses when I grew up was a horse called Roadster.
Oh, yeah.
Who used to run
Absolutely
in those blue and white colours. Was it trained by Colin Nash? Is it Colin?
Yeah, Colin Nash, owned and trained by Colin.
And he is your...
He did actually, he's my grandfather. He was actually trained by Peter Bailey. So my grandfather trained him as a pointer, but Peter Bailey had him as a young horse. Now, my grandfather, Colin Nash, was very, very, very good friends with Captain Foster. I mean, best friends. Uncle Tim, we always used to call him, because he used to come around on Christmas Day and all sorts, and he was a great friend of the families. And anyway, Colin said to the captain, "You need to come around and see this horse, because I think he's a horse we can take under rules, and he's a proper horse." And the captain came round and said, "I'm not training that giraffe." He's about 17.3 and ungainly and just legs everywhere. So he said, "Well, that's fine. I'll send it to Peter Bailey." So it went to Peter Bailey. It won a bumper first time out, 100-1. So anyway, my grandfather never let the captain live it down. He was, but anyway, he ended up being a very good horse. Yeah, I think he was third in the Arkle, potentially, possibly. Or he was definitely third at the festival, in the race. But I mean, I was very, very young then. So
Colin also had a couple of other claims to fame in providing jockeys of varying degrees of ability with their first winner, I believe, as well.
Right. I mean, Brough Scott used to ride for Grampy many moons ago in point-to-point, so there's been a whole host of them, yeah. I mean, Richard Dunwoody was obviously the famous one. He rode his first winner at the Cheltenham Hunter Chase evening in May on a mare called Game Trust, who was a brilliant mare that they Grampy owned and trained and won lots and lots of races. But he gave Richard Dunwoody his first ever winner at that meeting. And Grampy always used to say that Richard used to for the first few rides, he always used to fall off because he was so weak. And then when he was about 16, and then it suddenly clicked, and he rode a winner on Game Trust, and he never looked back. It was it was onwards and upwards from there. But so yeah, fond memories, and even the likes of Chris Maud, Luke Harvey, they all used to ride for Grampy and point-to-points.
Oh, great jockeys! Now we're getting into absolute greats here.
I believe Luke's first winner is for a Charlie.
Yeah, and Luke always tells the story that Granny and Grampy used to pick him up from the captains when he was 16 or 17 years old, take him off to the point. And he said they'd get there, and he said it was always so exciting because they're the most marvelous picnic. out the back of the car. A few shots of port before they walked the course. He said he was absolutely late by the time he came to ride the race. So,
Harry, just two quick questions before we let you go. One, put me in the mindset of a young, upwardly mobile trainer like you, and I'm delighted to hear you've got new owners this season. But when you have to watch on and you read a sort of Nicky Henderson trainer file and you see Nichols firing in winners left, right and centre, then you look to Ireland and see the ammunition that Willie Mullins has got and Gordon Elliott doing what he did at Down Royal at the weekend. What's that like for someone like you who's climbing that ladder, if you like?
Sure. Well, you know, I obviously have enormous admiration for those trainers that you mentioned, but for me, it's always been about you know concentrating and focusing on my operation, taking it each day as it comes, and you know, I can't make it happen too quickly. It's going to happen in its own time, and that's better for I'm building an operation, gently and gradually, I should say is the right word, gradually. And, I'm just focused on what I'm doing. I'm trying to get better quality of animal. I'm trying to get a better quality of owner all the time. We also, try and make it fun for our syndicates and clubs. And we just keep ourselves focused on what we're doing from season to season. And look, that's all I can do. And hopefully one day, we can compete. Well, as we are hopefully we are competing with those.
Absolutely.
At the big days, but hopefully we can get the numbers up. And, I don't know, obviously I train from, where I grew up and, I'm not sure we have the space for such sheer numbers of horses, but I think we might lose that personal touch as well, because I ride out all the time, and, we're very hands-on with my assistant trainer and my wife, and we don't feel that, perhaps it's right for us to be that big, but we'd like to get bigger, obviously, and we've got planning permission for another barn. But if we could get up to about 80, I think we could keep that individual attention and that personal touch, and concentrate on quality rather than quantity. And I think that would that would satisfy us.
If you can stay on the line, you might want to hear. We might be speaking to Daryl Jacob in a minute, who rode for you today. But we'll come to that in a minute.
Fell off. I don't know if you've seen it. I don't know how we didn't win, but it's my fault because the horse was.
He said it was his fault.
Well, yeah, no. Well, the horse was
blame him.
Just very green. She was very green, and at Musselburgh, when you get to the finish line, there's a rail that they have to go right-handed straight away, and I think the rail just came up, and she just put the brakes on. And jinked to the right, and it was some sit. He did very well to keep the partnership intact. But
hopefully we'll speak to you in a second. But just Harry, for the Newbury members, because we're about to talk about the 10 to follow in a second. If they were to put in one horse from your stable, what would you recommend them to do?
Yeah, I was asked this last week. Actually, I'm going to stick with the same.
Sorry,
it's got to be Animois. It's got to be Animois. I think. He won nicely the other day at Wetherby, having been off the track a long time. He's always promised to be a good horse. He's a half brother to Lorenz. He's got a fabulous pedigree, and he's been schooling over a fence nicely. So, he's going to go chasing now, and I hope that his mark is workable to go chasing, and that he can progress through novices handicap chases. So I think hopefully he's still nicely handicapped off 1, 3, 2. So it'd be Animois.
Perfect. Say no more. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for making the internet work. We're trying to get hold of Nicky Henderson, whose internet is down. So I think he's gone out to about 66 to 1 to come on the call, unfortunately. So we thank you enormously, Harry, for your time.
Yeah, no problem. Pleasure. Thanks, guys. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Harry. As Ed mentioned a moment or two ago, we're very close to the start of the Tote 10 to follow competition. And it may be of particular interest to Newbury members, all of you watching in, but we'll come on to that in a moment. So I'm going to join us now is Jamie Benson of the Tote, because what we wanted to do right at the outset is just remind everyone of the rules. I'm sure many years ago, you'll remember it was so popular with a big paycheck and what have you. And it's nice to see with the Tote under its new branding that it's been brought back over the last couple of years. So first of all, very good evening to you, Jamie. How are you?
Hi, Richard. Yeah, very good. Thanks. Thanks for having me on.
Can you just, we'll talk about strategy and a little bit about the 10 to follow and why it might be important for Newbury members in a moment. But can you just sort of start by fleshing it out? I'm sure most people are familiar with the sort of fantasy concept through Fantasy Premier League, etc. But just remind us of the basic rules for the Tote 10 to follow.
Yeah, absolutely. We've revived the old competition that used to be run back in the day through postal selections. We've now digitized it. And basically the premise is you pick 10 horses to basically win points for you throughout the season, depending on how they run, what races they win. There are varying points from grade ones, which score 25 points, down to a normal race, which scores 10 points. There are also additional bonus races that score an extra 25 points. They're all the big races you'd be familiar with, all the various King Georges of this world and Gold Cups. And the aim is to basically try at your best to pick the winners throughout the season. It's one of those that, in hindsight, you look back at previous years and it all makes very easy reading. But then you start to pick it now, and you go, God, it's quite the puzzle. In short, it's for £5 a chance to win hundreds of thousands of pounds, hopefully, and it's a season-long enjoyment, effectively.
Now, one of the issues is always, of course, as we all know as tipsters, or as soon as you put your neck on the line, there's an injury or something that goes on. But you can construct there is an ability to substitute horses later on in the season. So, if you want to take a chance with some of the early bonus races, like the Ladbrokes Trophy, of course, you can do that. If it doesn't work, you do have a sort of bailout scenario. Is it prior to the festival? Absolutely.
So there's a substitution window at the beginning of March, just before the Cheltenham Festival, where you're allowed to make 2 substitutions to your team. And it's funny you mentioned the loading up for the Ladbrokes Trophy. I seem to remember, Richard, last year I think you had the winner of the Ladbrokes Trophy, and you all tend to follow.
No, don't tell him that.
Look, absolutely. I'm going to say that what I should have said, Ed, clearly at that point in time, is that's it. I should have declared victory, not allowed any more votes, postal or otherwise, and maybe I'd have walked off with a prize, because it all went a bit pear-shaped after that. So I have some sympathies with Mr. T. Not many, but that was one of them. So we'll chat about strategy and everything in a few moments, Jamie, if we may. We'll come back to you. But Ed, I know we've got a couple of jockeys who we're particularly grateful joining us this evening. And absolutely. I don't know whether they're still driving or whether they're parked up on the way back from Musselburgh, but I think maybe we shouldn't keep them waiting if they're tucked in a lay-by somewhere.
Let's find out. And Richard, you're being asked by Jeremy Blackburn on the Q&A facility at the top of my screen for the Ladbrokes Trophy winner of this year. So you can have a few minutes to think about that as we bring in, from, I think, a service station somewhere up north, clearly on Daryl Jacobs' phone, Dickie Johnson. Daryl Jacob, can you hear us?
Yes, yeah, we can hear you. All loud and clear. A high life of being a jump jockey. Early week.
Where are you?
We're at T-Bay Services on the way back from Musselburgh. We've just called in, and I think unfortunately I'll be buying the coffee in the services now in a minute.
So tell me, what's worse? A, going all the way to Musselburgh and finishing 10th of 13, or B, having, what will it be, 8 hours in the car with Daryl Jacob?
Well, it's a close run thing. It's listening to he had to explain how the horse didn't win for the last 18 phone calls. So I actually wish it had won. Then I can make him buy the coffee.
We just had Harry Daryl with us here. He says it wasn't your fault after all.
I think I had too many whiskies before I went out to ride. Darcy got a bit loose.
You were listening. What's Daryl's driving like? Is it better than his riding?
We haven't come off the road yet, so that's always a good start. I did think about getting off the cliff, driving off the cliff after that horse got beaten today. I did think about it.
Well, don't do that, because we want to get some of your horses to follow in a minute, Daryl. So remember who you've got coming up this season. While you look at your phone and remember, particularly the double greens, Dickie, just ask you about a few, because your list has been published. You probably can't remember any of them, but I've got them listed here. And a couple caught my interest, particularly Time Hill. And I don't want to remind you necessarily about the Albert Bartlett at Cheltenham, but for you, was that the one that got away?
Yeah, look, he was in the meeting of the Sandwich. He's not the biggest horse, and unfortunately that day he lost out, I think, for his size. And look, I'm not saying it definitely cost him the race, but it happened at the wrong time. And I still think that we haven't seen the best of him. He has scored over fences, but he's at the moment he's going to stay over hurdles. The plan is to go him to Newbury for the long distance hurdle there on Ladbrokes Day. So I've scored him twice already this season now, and he feels really well. He had an entry at Wetherby last weekend, but Philip thought we'd wait for Newbury. And I'm very hopeful that he would make up into a Stairs hurdle horse.
You could bump into Paisley Park there,
He's been there, and he's decided he wants something else now.
Others in your list, I'm interested. You must be close to your heart, even though you missed out on him largely last season. Maybe you'll get the ride this season. Who knows? But Defi Desoy, what a hero he's been.
Yeah, look, he's a stable star down at Phillips, and look, I know I don't know what happened. Nothing sort of turned up after Cheltenham last year, but obviously his form up to the festival was immaculate, and he looks in great form. I know they're very happy with him at home, and we're hoping that he's still got unfinished business in the champion chase, and again, I think they're hoping to start him off. I think at Cheltenham in the sludge chase. I think that's the if all goes to plan, I think that's the ideal sort of race for him to start in. But he's an exciting horse to have, and I think you'd be very brave to not put him in your 10 to follow. He's a horse he's won the Triumph Hurdle, and he's consistently performed every year. So I think hopefully he's got another big season ahead of him.
I must say, Richard, there was one in there that caught my eye. Everglow. Last time I saw Everglow, he was trying to stop at the bottom of the hill at Chepstow. Am I doing him a disservice, or is it just you ran out after 9?
Yeah, I just we were trying to find a dark horse, or a horse that people perhaps you wouldn't jump up to see, and obviously there's an awful lot of horses that stand out in the horses you can look at, but he's a horse that ran very well in 2 very hot bumpers last year. I actually really thought that he'd be one of our best novice hurdlers this year, and he's had 2 runs already and run well, but just I don't think we've seen the best of him yet. And I know what you mean, Chepstow. I fully understand. Getting around the bend, he didn't look the ideal partner, but again, I'm pretty sure about his honesty, and I think you'll see him hopefully in some decent races, but especially after Christmas, maybe up to 3 miles. Can
you use your camera work here, Dickie, to get? Can you get Daryl on the camera? There he is. Can you get him? How's your camera work?
I might get very sad. Like, the amount of good horses he's going to have to ride in those double green is a bit upsetting for me.
There he is.
Hi, Ed.
Now, hello, Daryl. I'm looking forward to particularly. I'm very well. The Betfair Chase. You're not favourite on Bristol, but is he still got it in him? Do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Obviously, last year it was documented after the Betfair Chase he had his problems beforehand, but he's come back in this year. And he still is a relatively young horse, and I'm really excited. And I seen him at Nigel's a week ago, and he looks super. Sparky's very, very happy with him, and we were planning on going to the Charlie Hall with him, but with Surname in, and we didn't want to give him a bruising race on his first run of the season, so we're going straight to the Betfair Chase, very fresh and very, very well, and that's when he runs his best races.
And which other horses in the double green are you most excited about over the next few months?
I'm actually really looking forward to a horse. He's already won this year. He's called Valerius of Alan Kings. He won a novice hurdle at Weatherby with me, and I thought it was a very good novice hurdle. And he won very, very impressively that day. He quickened well from the last, and I'm quite excited about him, to be honest.
And what's it like having? We've talked about your driving. What's it like having the champ in the passenger seat? What's his chat like on the way down?
Well, to be honest with you, we haven't been chatting because he's been sleeping the whole way. So I've had no company. I've been listening to BBC Radio 2. He's got BBC Radio 2 on. So I've been listening to the election out in America.
Any news on that, by the way?
I'm just going to bring him back down to earth after, he's a little bit hot-headed after the bump today. So we're just having a relaxing trip home.
You can get the Champions League football on after this, Daryl.
Brilliant.
What's it? It's strange for us. We're talking to the annual members at Newbury who sadly can't go racing at the moment, Daryl. It's very strange for us. We try to stay upbeat on the TV when there's no crowd there. What's it like for you jockeys riding at meetings with no crowd to get a buzz off?
It is obviously a lot different. I mean, you can't beat the adrenaline that the horses get and the adrenaline that we get, by hearing crowds and hearing people talk, and whether it's good things or bad things they're saying about you. Adrenaline's everything, really. And like you say, it's obviously very sad that we can't get crowds there. Hopefully, we'll be back soon. But one thing I'll be looking forward to having the crowds back.
And wave that whip at the ITV podium at Cheltenham next week. We look forward to seeing you there, Daryl. And Dickie, thanks a million for making the effort to pull over in the service station and wake up and speak to us this evening. Thank you so much.
Pleasure. No problem at all.
Safe journeys, both.
Safe journey.
Cheers.
Ed, what I'm going to do actually, I've got, I think if I can find it, I've actually got Richard's 10 to follow in its entirety. We sort of mentioned it in passing, and we'll do Nicky Henderson's as well before I pick back up with Jamie, if I may. So you mentioned the top two, Defi de Soy and Time Hill. We've also mentioned Everglow. The other 7, if you're interested in jotting them down, I'll explain why it might be useful to you in a moment. Sporting John, who I must admit is a horse I'd forgotten about, so that's an interesting one to put in. Shishkin, who will be in most people's. Envoy Allen, Abracadabras, Native River, who we didn't actually mention there, Allaho, and Thomas Darby. So those are Richard Johnson's 10 in their entirety. Obviously, we'll try and find a way of putting this up for you to refer to post this event, but they are Richard Johnson's 10. So if I can go back to you, Jamie, we'll pick back up with the follow. You mentioned the rules beforehand. Strategy, I've got my own views on strategy, but let's hear from the man who sees what everybody does. So tell me what we should be considering as the main strategic points when we're constructing our 10 to follow.
Yeah, so the short answer is there's no dyed-in-the-wool correct way to do it, but a good guide is to basically base it around the bonus races. And the bonus races predominantly split into 3-mile chases. You've got the King George, you've got the Betfair Chase, Gold Cup, and also in Ireland, you have the Savills Chase at Christmas at Leopardstown and the Irish Gold Cup. And so those are worth double points. Ultimately, if you have a horse that's winning one or more than one of those, you're in an incredibly strong position. So you probably want to make your hand reasonably heavy in 3-mile chases, maybe 2 from the UK, 2 from Ireland, to try and cover all bases. And then also the 2-mile hurdle division. You probably want Irish hurdler and an English hurdler to cover off the Irish Champion Hurdle, which is a bonus race, and then ultimately the Champion Hurdle at Cheltenham.
I'll lay my cards on the table. I think I'm an ex-accountant, and I'm still as boring as I was 25 years ago, counting numbers. And I think actually that's the scenario I like to follow, in the sense that it's a bit like, for those that do play Fantasy Premier League, you know, it's all very well having your winger that comes off and has one big payday, but if you're constantly losing points to people who have your Salahs and your Kanes and I do think that you can change a couple around the outside, but you sort of have to nail your colours to the mast of 7, maybe even 8 good horses who, as you say, will compete in the championship races, split them over divisions, take in novices as well, because quite often they have very easy tasks until we get to the festival. And while in the other day, 1 to 14, they can amass a few points for you before you have to put your neck on the line and choose festival winners.
Completely. And Chamberlin in particular this season, there's a very strong program of intermediate novice chases in Ireland, which are all grade 1s. So you can see him picking up quite a few races. And even though the JLT, which he'll run in, the Marsh now as it's known, which he'll run at the festival, isn't a bonus race, you could see him picking up in the region of 75 or more points throughout the season just by winning grade 1s at what might be prohibitively short odds, but points are points in the 10 to follow, and they all count. And yeah, very much so. I mean, if you look at the list that won last year, a chap called Richard Hutchison, who won £177,000. In hindsight, his list feels so achievable. But and they're all big names. There's no handicap hurdler that was £40 well in. They're all Album Photo, the Gold Cup winner, Champ, the RSA winner. You look down at Envoy, who again didn't win a single bonus race, but just picked up very, very straightforward races throughout the season. And ultimately, like you say, Richard, that's the key.
And finally, because I want to bring this up to the Newbury members as to why it's important, like Fantasy Premier League, you can construct mini leagues. Ed's son Sam is in a mini league for football with my 2 and various other people, and it drives us nuts. But it's also quite entertaining. And there's going to be a specific Newbury members league that will be constructed. Harry will send information out along with Richard Johnson's 10 to follow, I think Henderson's 10 to follow, maybe even mine if you really want to avoid a few. But yes, we're going to construct a Newbury Racing Club mini league, the winner of which I believe will get a free membership for the following 12 months.
Yes, absolutely. And the private leagues, the way it works is you literally just enter the code once you've done your stable. You can enter either the main competition, which is £5 entry, to win the guaranteed £150,000, but it could be much more, depending on how many people enter. Or you can enter for free, and there is a £5,000 top prize for the free competition. So you don't need to stake any money. You just sign up and you can enter the Newbury League that way. Or alternatively, set up, like you say, leagues with friends. Maybe not children. I would hate to add. You must be over 18. But yeah, absolutely, get your friends together, and it provides. Even if you feel like you're out of the main competition, it's still great getting one over your friends. So I'd highly recommend that.
Yeah, Ed and I can vouch for that. Jamie, thank you very much for the time being. Ed, just before we move on to Keith Otterson, who's going to come on and talk about the season, we should remind we're going to have a few minutes at the end for questions and answers. We've got a few trickling through, but now's the ideal time to add to a few more if you so desire.
Well, I've got a couple for you right now before we hear about conditions ahead of tomorrow's meeting. Come on then, Hoiles. Who's going to win the Ladbrokes Trophy this year?
So, top of the game is in my 10 to follow, because he follows that traditional pattern of a second season chaser that likes of Trebolgan and Bobsworth did, because he's got this added issue of missing a season and being rated 165. So he would be the horse I would put in from a 10 to follow perspective. I'm more interested as a bet on Champagne Court, who I actually thought would run in the Paddy Power, but actually is running over 3 miles 1. I watched him for the whole of last season and felt he was a really interesting horse in that 0 to 145 race that's now no longer going to be part of the festival. And he ran perfectly well on the day, but he never quite came back to that early season form. He jumps like a handicapper. With no Irish and a more seasoned bunch of veteran chasers in the middle of the weight. So I could see him running okay at a reasonable price. So if I was nailing my colours to Moss for a bet, it would be Champagne Court of Jeremy Scott's.
Very good. Your next question, Richard, and you can answer this one because without Nicky Henderson and his internet not working, you're not going to offend him. They want to know, would you side with Envoy Allen or Shishkin if you had to choose one of them for the season ahead?
Envoy Allen, just because I've seen him jump now. And I just think that's the key with novices, isn't it? Again, I think we'll put Nicky Henderson's 10 up at some point in time, and Shishkin is obviously in there. He has left out All Art, which I was really slightly worried about, or Allard, whichever we'd like to say, because I actually thought he was the nicest looking novice hurdler who I thought would go chasing this season. And he's not in Nicky's 10. He says he jumps well at home, etc. But I could, maybe he will turn out coming up against Envoy Allen in the 2 mile 5. But at the moment, I would side with Envoy Allen because I've just seen him do it more regularly. And Shishkin did make one mistake. I know he got hampered as well. He made one mistake in that Supreme. So his hurdling wasn't always completely blemish-free. So at the moment, Envoy Allen. Now we know that Nicky's internet isn't working. And the other thing is, I would oppose Champ. I wouldn't include Champ in my list. I think those sort of finishes where it looks as if a horse kicks in and suddenly picks up at the end of a line race is nearly always because the others have gone too quick and are stopping. And I thought Manila Indo was the one that, out of last year's RSA, that looked the Gold Cup potential horse in the second season. So I'd stick him in over Champ.
I asked Mick Fitz on Saturday, wherever we were on Saturday. Where were we? Oh, we were at Ascot on Saturday. And I said to him, any news on Shishkin and how he's schooled? And Fitzy just had a smile the size of Berkshire when he talked about him. Honestly, he's obviously doing lots of good things at home. And I've got another couple of stinkers from members' questions to you, but we'll ask them in a minute and we'll bring Brough back as well. But let's hear from Keith, shall we, Richard, first?
Yeah, ideally. Obviously, we're on the cusp of the first of the jumps meetings, and Keith Otterson joined us, I'm delighted to say. And Keith, once we get to just double check that you're there, I've been very interested in sort of the whole season, really, from your perspective, because we worked our way through a rushed flat season, if you like, in many ways. Is it now sort of a time to draw breath? Obviously, we're not going to have crowds back, etc. But jumping is very much, Newbury's tradition at this beginning of the year when the good young horses coming out. So can we look forward to a bit more optimism to a really enjoyable season?
Good evening, Richard. Hi, Ed. Hello, everybody. I hope you're all well.
Okay.
I think so. It's a little bit of a change around. It's a small relief in a way because the flat season, when we started in June and racing resumed after the 1st of June, we didn't know quite what was going to happen through the end of April and May. When we were getting ready, we weren't sure when we were going to start. And then we got going, and as you say, it was a bit of a whirlwind. We've had a few highlights through the season. We had some great races with Happy Romance in the super sprint. I think Dream of Dreams performance in the Hungerford was excellent, and even finishing off the other day at the usual end of season sort of soft to heavy ground. I remember seeing you there. It was pouring rain. I was doing my best not to call it heavy, but it was. We had good performance from Hugh and Glenn in the St Simon. But I've enjoyed the flat season. It was great to get back racing, albeit under strange circumstances, and we've had great help from media and TV partners in racing TV, and of course ITV bringing the show to everybody. But you're right, we've turned a corner now. It's another chapter, and we've seen some great jump racing, not just last weekend, but over the last couple of weeks. And it's time for us to pick up the baton and move forward towards Ladbrokes Winter Carnival, Ladbrokes Trophy, and we start off tomorrow.
So just on the ground tomorrow, let's start with the obvious thing to answer. I mean, obviously it got pretty squelchy on the flat towards the back end, but people will be very aware that squelchy on heavy ground on the flat, you haven't raced on the jumps course for a while now, and so it's going to be markedly different. It's very different. I mean, how you describe the going for flat and jumps is basically why it's so different. But we leave the jumps course to its own devices to sort of go back to its natural state during the summertime. We gradually bring it in if we need to through September. And then for Arc weekend, we had about 5 inches of rain over that weekend. So that was a good starting point, a little bit more added irrigation. And the last week, we've had 40 millimetres of rain since last Tuesday, which brought it on nicely. We were sort of good to soft with another 12 mil yesterday morning. But because we haven't raced on it and it's still pretty active, the soil temperature's been quite high, around about 10, 11 degrees still. The track's taken it really well, and I think we'll start off on good or just the easier side of good ground for tomorrow. At the moment, we called it good to soft today, good in places. We'll be virtually good tomorrow, but proper good jumping ground and very sort of natural ground. The course is in good nick. I'm pleased with it.
And Keith, we're always talking, and I'm sure families do it as well, backgrounds on Zoom calls. Hoiles has got a sort of retro fridge. I've got my old football presenting days there on Monday Night Football. Now, you've got 3 horses above you there, which must be, I assume, favourites of yours.
Well, no, I mean, that's a very famous old print. I'm sure lots of people have had. I've got a few. I've got one you can't see in the other corner, which when Hereford Racecourse closed down back in 2012, I knew people wouldn't miss a few things. It's a picture of John Joe on Dawn Run. And I must admit, I don't know who painted it, but I should know. But neither Dawn Run looks anything like Dawn Run, and John Joe certainly doesn't look like him. So that's a favourite of mine. No, these guys are very well known in the background. It's Red Rum, Arkle, and Desert Orchid, of course.
Must be Desi, yeah.
Yeah.
I've got Martha's Son and Dublin Flyer there. That's Dublin Flyer. That's Martha's Son.
Yeah. Lovely.
In the snow at Downton, which I like. Hoiles has got a beach.
Yeah,
but on a serious note, Keith, the very best of luck. We look forward to seeing you. We'll see you first for the Ladbrokes Festival at the end of the month. But best of luck tomorrow, and we really look forward to the jumping and lifting everyone's spirits.
Thanks, guys. Good to see you.
Right, then, let's finish with some Q&A. Richard, if we'll bring back Brough for this as well. Right, first one. Album photo, Richard. We'll quite keep these as quick fire as we can. Album photo. Could he be as good as one horse in the picture, Denman and Courtauld Star?
Yeah, obviously he can in terms of wins of Gold Cup. I wouldn't put him in the same class. That's probably a little unfair. Maybe some people also like Seymour Business and maybe some don't really capture the public imagination quite so much. I think what he's achieved is fantastic, so please don't get me wrong there. I think the great thing about Courtauld Star and Denman, and Brough will probably remember this from years gone by, you sort of get a vintage crop of horses. You know, Long Run came and joined in. I don't think we've got a vintage crop of stayers at the moment, but what we did have around the Courtauld Star Denman period was a very, very competitive division. I think the staying chasers were dominant at that stage. So I think they achieved more in winning their races than Album Photo has done so far. Nothing to take anything away from him. He retained his crown, but I think those Gold Cups, maybe it's just a generational thing, Brough, but that was a great period for staying chasers, wasn't it?
Oh, no, I mean, you think what Denman did and Courtauld Star, and remember they were in the box next door. So, I mean, they were Album Photo, admirable horse, but he's got to do a bit more. so far, so good.
Brough, being asked how much you enjoy, and Denman would be the obvious one, in races like the Hennessy and Ladbrokes Trophy, horses carrying monster weights to win.
Well, there's something very special about that because you physically the effort they've done. I remember when Denman won it, I was standing by the winning post, and afterwards, you know, when Ruby came back, he was so proud of the horse. You know, not of himself, but of the horse. You know, what a wonderful horse he is. And to be close to this great big thing, you know, great big thing, Denman. And after all, he'd been off, hadn't he? Because he clearly had a bit of a heart problem. He was such an extraordinary machine because he was almost too good for his motor, and that's why he managed to survive. But I mean, Quarter Star and Denman, I mean, we'll never really have a pair like them. Not the next door boxes. Flying Bolt and Arkle weren't in the next door boxes, but they're the nearest thing. They were actually better horses, but they didn't go on for as long.
I think it's a good point, Ed, about the giving weight away, because you know now you can't no longer have the old Victor Chandler, if you like. But that Brough is my sort of childhood memory. I was there when Desert Orchid and Panto Prince fought out the finish to what was the first Victor Chandler. And there is something, isn't there, about that sort of weight concession, the class, Azertia Panicio in the same race a few years later. And you know, it is a shame maybe that all of the grade ones, the Game Spirit's another case in point, you know, but when races become grade ones, Game Spirit's not quite applied in that sense, you know, you lose that ability. You know, trainers, if we owned that horse, we would duck giving weight away for a level weight race where you're, you know, 1 to 3 on in the Ascot Chase, or 3 to 1 on in the Ascot Chase. You know, that's the dilemma. It's hard to force horses down that route in this day and age.
Excuse me if I'm looking blankly at the screen. This is me scrolling through the questions. I do think it's encouraging that Paul Nicholls is keen to do that, it seems, at the moment. He did it with Frode on the other day, and he nearly did it with Surname, nearly ran him at Ascot with a big weight, but went to Wetherby instead, where he was so good. But he certainly seems willing to do that. Brough, you're being asked best jump jockey you've ever seen. Is that easy?
Different eras. It's very different. You can't really compare Stanley Matthews with Pele, with Ronaldo. And therefore, at that time, Fred Winter was quite extraordinary. Terry Biddlecombe was extraordinary cavalier, immense talent. For commitment, nothing has ever or will ever go near McCoy. For all-round talent, I don't think anyone will match, in my time, Ruby Walsh. We've been unbelievably lucky to have those two riding together. I mean, they were quite extraordinary. And if you look at the pictures, I was actually looking at the 1925 Grand National yesterday for various reasons. I mean, we have tightened it all up. Jockeys are much, much fitter, much, much tighter. Some of their horsemanship isn't as good. Sorry, Daryl. It was on the flat, he nearly fell off today. That's fine. But old jockeys always think harsh of old. But no, Ruby Walsh as a talent around the fence was quite extraordinary. Quite extraordinary.
I can answer this one for you. Sorry, Richard. Yeah. Brough, your coldest ever day on a racecourse. I think that might actually have been Newbury, mightn't it? The day when you had to change your coat. Do you remember in February?
Well, it was.
You were like an ice cube.
And that was the most brutal line that came out from one of those Twitter feeds, because it was one of our first days. It's the first day I'd actually been on television. They said, "Crikey, what's ITV done now? They brought Brough Scott out of the deep freeze." It's a bit harsh. I know it was 30 years since I've been on.
What is that line you've got on the front of your website, Brough, which I absolutely love?
I think that's probably that was a letter I got from somebody who, when I started doing television, which the great thing was the underlining. It said, "You were underlined the world's worst underlined jockey. Now underlined, you are the world's worst underlined commentator. Last line, please shut up."
I've had plenty similar, I can assure you, Brough. Last couple of questions, and everyone can go and enjoy their dinner. Hoiles, your favourite commentator in another sport? That's a good question.
Richie Benno, I think.
Great answer.
I think so. You may remember, Brough will remember, the old days of the morning line, that there was a period when Channel 4 used to have used to cross to the cricket to promote it, because it used to follow. And I appear every now and again on the morning line, and I don't really get nervous and what have you. But I remember turning over page 3, and it says RH links to RB. Oh, this was Friday night, and I didn't sleep. I couldn't work out what to say. I didn't know. I was an absolute bundle of nerves. He obviously was delightful and probably humoured me, thinking, who is this young person who's, But I think just the economy. Alistair Down's the same the way he writes. Language used correctly, Brough, exactly the same, is beautiful, isn't it? It paints, we all remember reading those books where you imagine scenes that leap out of the page because of the beauty of language. And I think that's what you're trying to convey more than anything else. He would often use 2 words instead of 20 and still.
I think that's the thing. I think that I use that in media training, actually. In the media training we do, the master of letting the pitchers do the talking. Harder for you as a race caller, really. You can't really do that, but he was the master of it. Him and Des Lynam.
The tempos of the 2 games are very different, obviously, and is a requirement of sort of modern broadcasting. But I do think he had that capacity, and we can all just remember, the couple of words that summed things up when the streaky came on at the Oval, and it's just, it was a master of his craft and painting pictures with a minimum number of words. So. I think I go for Rich Bennett.
Lucy's asked a question here, Richard, which I'm not sure you can answer in a minute, but do your best. She said, hi, with the increase of the number of racehorse owned by syndicates and racing clubs, which we love and it's great, and Newbury's done a brilliant job in their hosting of large ownership groups, which I think we'll all agree with. Many racecourses really struggle with this area. Would the panel have any ideas for solutions to this dilemma?
So let me answer it as briefly as I can with my Wincanton hat on, because I'm on the board there, and our intention is to try and provide once we can, obviously, a syndicate's room, if you like. The trade-off you get is obviously people who own entire horses can get a little upset if they get steamrolled by 36 wanting to go into the paddock. So I think it's up to syndicates to administer badges that require access to specific areas, as generously as the racecourse will let them. But I think it's the racecourse's obligation to make sure that everyone who wants to come from a syndicate gets more than adequately looked after. And I think the growth of syndicate rooms, we were looking at, a room specifically for syndicates and adorning it with, pictures of syndicate horses that have won at Wincanton down the years, where people can get tea and coffee all afternoon, a la being an annual member. We probably couldn't say, yes, we get all 30 of you in the paddock on every single occasion, because it potentially creates all sorts of other issues. But I think racecourses need to think that there needs to be a way of entertaining everyone who's associated with a horse, even if you can't offer the elite level, and you still have to have draws for badges or lists for the 6, 8, 10, 12. But I think it's very important, particularly at the moment, because we're going to lose the middle ground of ownership, I think, as Brough will probably agree. You're still going to have the very rich, for whom this pandemic is not going to immediately impact their wealth, but you are going to need to keep as many people involved in the game as possible. There'll be a lot of scaling down. It's important that syndicates are adequately looked after.
Chaps, well, the Chamberlin sports team, we're looking at it right now. Thank you very much indeed. These 2 are available for all weddings and conferences, which can't happen at the moment, but there we go. And on behalf of Chamberlin Sports, we must say a couple of thank yous, mustn't we? Emma Blackburn has made this happen behind the scenes. How she's done it, I've no idea. Apparently we've been on a Zoom webinar, whatever that is, but she's done it seamlessly through today. And to get those videos up, I think you'll have appreciated that. That was some effort of Arkle earlier on, Brough. I thought that was absolutely fabulous. Likewise, Frankel. So Emma, thank you very much. Harriet, thank you so much for your support. I don't think annual members will have any idea just how much Harriet does for all of us. Her taste in music is horrendous, as you'll have heard through the summer in the background, but she's brilliant to us, and that helps in television, and not all racecourses are like that, I can assure you. And to Harriet, to Keith, and all the Newbury team, best of luck tomorrow. We look forward to really broadcasting some great racing over the next few months on ITV. And my message to everyone from the 3 of us, to all of you at home looking in today, we can't wait to have you back on the racecourse. We're sorry you're suffering now, but we promise you one thing, and hopefully you can promise us as well, that when you come back on a racecourse, let's all enjoy it and appreciate it more than ever. And in the meantime, I hope we can just lift a few spirits over the next few weeks by showing it on television. In the meantime, we'll see you live from, Ascot, showing Wincanton, Aintree and Doncaster at the weekend. Have a lovely evening. From Brough, myself and Richard, goodbye.
Right.